Global Marketing Communications Facebook extra für Sie nach Köln gekommen. Ich freue mich sehr, dass sie da ist. Very welcome, hello Freeland!
Thanks for having me. I hope everyone had fun last night. So I wanted to talk to you today because we're standing at a unique and amazing point in time. Never before have nearly 1 billion people been able to meaningfully connect with the people and things that they care about. They've never before been able to share more with others and gather more information from others than they have with Facebook. But sharing with others and gathering from others, this is nothing new. It's been happening since the cavemen. But what we share and how we gather information has changed pretty dramatically. So for example, while the cavemen might have shared that that herb over there on the ground is poisonous and their friends shouldn't eat it, I may gather information from my friends about what herbs are perfect with the rack of lamb I'm cooking this weekend. But the reality is, we don't share to fill space. We share with purpose. We share and gather information with the idea of improving and enhancing our lives. But the real question is, why do we share? It's important to understand. When you think about it, sharing is about building relationships and forming common ties. So over the last couple days, how many of you have met someone new and said where you're from, what company you work for, who your clients are, even where you went to university? We start out a relationship by seeking those common ties and sharing things about ourselves so that we can find people in common, interests in common, things that can help form that relationship. So the reality is, we share as a part of building relationships. It's in our human nature. We also share to craft how others perceive us. So I may share with you that my favorite movie is The Godfather. And instantly you might think, I'm a little darker, I'm a little deeper, I like dramatic films. But what I didn't share with you was that I actually also really like Dumb and Dumber. The reality is, I chose to share with you a piece of information about myself to help craft how you perceive me. And just as important as what I share with you is what I choose not to share with you. So the reality is, what we share suddenly helps define us to other people. We also share to seek validation and input. So I may share with you that I'm exhausted. I flew in 20-hour travels and I'm completely wiped out. I share that with you to get empathy. It'll make me feel better if you feel bad for me, right? But the reality is, a lot of what we do and share is to get that kind of validation. About a month ago on Facebook, I posted this post. One of my local breweries that I love released a new beer called Maple Bacon Donut Ale. Sounds insane, right? So I thought this was hysterical, and I happen to love bacon. So I posted this to all of my friends, thinking this was great. And I wanted to be associated with this content. You know what? No one liked it, no one commented it, no one shared it. I felt completely deflated. I couldn't believe it. And I have to say, without even realizing it, one of the reasons I had posted that was to get that validation, to help define who I am a little bit more. Maybe that's defining me as a bacon lover, but helping to define me that much more. Sharing is fundamentally in our human nature. It's part of who we are. But just as sharing is in our human nature, so is gathering information. It's rare when you think about it that we make decisions or move forward in our lives without seeking input from other people or other sources. We're forever trying to find additional information to make sure our lives are the best that they can be. So when we look at gathering information, we do it to help inform our opinions. So for example, I might ask a few folks who they think will win the World Cup in 2014. Germany? What do you think? Germany. So my opinion is formed. Germany will definitely win the 2014 World Cup. We seek insight and information from other people to help inform our opinions. We also use it to make decisions. And whether those decisions are as innocuous as what vacuum cleaner to buy or as meaningful as what presidential candidate to vote for, we look to other people who may be more informed on a particular topic or more educated or expert on a particular topic to help us make decisions. So I'll give you an example from a few months ago. This is my husband. I'm sure he's mortified I'm showing him up here on screen with that god-awful pair of shorts. But a few months ago, he pulled those out. They were 20 years old. And I said, those have got to go. And he, of course, said, no, they don't. So we decided to put this to a vote. We decided to go to the masses on Facebook and ask them what we should do. And of course, we had all of our friends weigh in. And I thought, what normal, sane person would agree with him that he should keep these shorts? Well, guess what? 71 of my friends weighed in that the shorts should stay, much to my chagrin. So the reality is, we often go to people beyond ourselves, beyond our immediate circles, to figure out how to make decisions so that we don't make a wrong or bad decision. It's in our human nature. And finally, we want to enhance our lives. So I may ask you where I should go to dinner tonight while I'm in town, so I have the best experience while in Germany. Otherwise, I might just walk down the street and go to the first restaurant I see. That wouldn't be a great experience necessarily. I want to make sure I have the best experience. That I have the experience that'll make my trip here the best it can possibly be. And I may even ask people what I should order when I go to that restaurant to make sure I've enhanced that experience. So the reality is, we share and we gather. It's in our fundamental human nature, and that hasn't changed since the cavemen. It's part of who we are. But the reality is, technology has changed all this. While it hasn't changed that we share and we gather information, it's changed the way we do it. It's changed how we do it. It's changed the scale of how we do it. And the reality is, it's changed the speed with which we do it. If you look back through history, we've got lots of different forms of mass communication. Interestingly, they've all been built on the one previous to it, building on what people know and building on their core human nature. So you look at the printing press, and Gutenberg didn't automatically start printing portable paperbacks. The original printing presses produced huge tomes that were much like what the monks had originally handcrafted. The telephone was invented by Alexander Graham Bell, and he didn't envision it originally as one-to-one communication. He didn't know that could exist. He envisioned it originally to bring to a concert so that people could dial into a concert and hear the concert from far away. Film, originally, they were not the 2-hour, beautifully crafted, with wonderful plot lines and special effects films we know now. They were really more like visual newspapers. And television was more like a filmed play, and even television ads were like a visual radio ad. And while we think we're so much better here in the online world, on the internet, we basically just started out by putting print information online. We weren't that great after all, right? When we first started. So the reality is, everything that we've done until now has been built on what came before it. Technology has helped to change and evolve the ways we communicate pretty dramatically. And it's done it at a much faster rate then we as human beings have changed and evolved. In fact, if you think about it, the sharing and the gathering of information, as I said before, haven't really evolved that much over time. And if you look at all of these different forms of communication, the amazing thing is that they all still exist, with the exception of the telegraph. So what this also means is that every day we get more and more and more information thrown at us, whether through the newspapers or films or radio or online. And it all becomes completely overwhelming. Every day, I have a choice between hundreds of television stations, and that doesn't even include the content I can watch online. I can listen to a dozen different radio stations around San Francisco, or I can pretty much listen to music from any source around the world. I can either read the newspaper that's delivered onto my front porch, or in reality onto my iPad, or I can read the newspaper from all around the world. And I can even buy products from halfway around the planet rather than being relegated to the products that are just at my local shop. The reality is, with all of this information, with all of this content, it's completely overwhelming. So we seek ways that we can organize this information, that we can make this relevant and meaningful to us. So the way we do that is we look to people. And with the advent of social media technology, people become that organizing principle. If you think about it, the people you're connected to, your family, your friends, they might have similar interests to you. They might like the same things, like the same TV shows, they might like the same political candidates even. They also know what's meaningful to you and what's important to you. So it makes people a natural way to filter information, to add order to the massive amount of information that's coming at us. Sharing and gathering still exist. But the reality is, with social media technology, they can exist in one place. And on Facebook, that's our newsfeed. If you think about the newsfeed, there's a massive amount of information that flows through there on a daily basis. In fact, there are 2.5 billion stories that run through the newsfeed around the world every day, and 3.2 billion likes and comments on that stories. The amount of information is absolutely staggering. How can we all make sense of this? How can we all digest this information? But the reality is, my newsfeed doesn't have all that. Your newsfeed doesn't have all that. Each of our newsfeeds is personal to us, personally curated and edited by our friends and family. So when you think about it, it's much like your own personal newspaper. You can get the latest breaking news, the sports, the weather, politics, business, and even coupons and deals. But the reality is, all of this is that much more relevant to me because it's on the topics that I'm interested in that my friends and family know that I'm interested in. And that means that it's no wonder why advertisers and marketers see 8 times the engagement in newsfeed than they see anywhere else on Facebook. It is the most relevant place. It is where people are inherently ready to gather information. But the reality is this isn't just happening on Facebook. It's happening all around in different forms. This is a screen grab of Etsy. I don't know if you all have heard of Etsy. It's a great site. If you haven't visited, you definitely should. It's basically gives you the ability to buy arts, crafts, clothing, what have you, directly from the people who make those items all around the world. But the reality is, the selection is absolutely overwhelming. You go on, and the selection is endless. So when I was actually searching for a gift for a friend of mine I had no idea where to start. This was too much. So when I actually connected Etsy to Facebook, and I was reminded that my friend Marla is a rabid University of Oregon fan, where she went to college, and is a huge fan of the television show South Park, instantly I got great suggestions and ideas for the gifts that would be perfect to her. And suddenly there were not tens of thousands of gift ideas. There was a digestible, curated group of ideas that were just for her. And the reality is, now I can gather all my news and music and information through my friends. For example, I discovered one of my new favorite bands of Monsters and Men through my brother-in-law when I saw him listening to them online. I follow all the presidential elections and the latest of what's going on when I watch my friends comment on them online or I read what people are writing. I even discover new television programs. I noticed all of my friends were chatting about a show called Downton Abbey and very excited about the new premiere, so I started watching it as well. The reality is, we all have the ability now, through people as the organizing principle, to discover information that's relevant and meaningful to us. But what does this mean for marketers? We've all always thought about people first. We've all always put people at the center of our experience. And as marketers, we've actually always been the customer advocate within our different respective companies. But the difference here is in thinking about the shift to organizing around people, the shift to enabling people to share with one another. The bottom line is this presents a huge opportunity when you think about being able to communicate and build one-to-one personal connections with your customers. So think about it how things have always been. We've always been used to communicating through mass media. We're able to communicate one message through television or radio or what have you to multiple people, which has been great. But you know what? Some of those people may not have found that information or that content relevant or interesting to them. But now we have the ability to send customized messages to specific groups of people or even to specific individuals, one by one. It enables us to be that much more relevant to our customers and make sure that they're having the best experience with us. So the reality is, we need to go back to thinking about the concepts of sharing and gathering information. We need to think about those as we craft our marketing strategies, as we craft our creative, and as we craft our strategies for buying media, for communicating out more broadly. So I want to boil this down to 5 key points to think about. 1, you want to make sure that your brand is relatable. You're probably all sitting there right now saying, well, of course, that's my job. I make my brand relatable. But it's a little bit different. If you think about going back to why we share and what we choose to define us, the reality is we need to make sure that our brands can connect with people, that our brands can offer value to them. People don't inherently want to connect to a big corporate entity. They want to connect with a person or a thing where they find value. It's important to remember that because we now have the ability to communicate one-to-one with customers, it also should shift the voice of how we talk to them. No longer are we screaming at the masses, but now we're in a one-to-one conversation. And that should shift how we think about our brand voice and our creative. It begs us to be that much more authentic. It begs us to be that much more real as we represent our brand values. Let's look at an example from Newcastle. Newcastle has done a great job of building their brand voice and bringing it to life on Facebook. They have made it funny and quirky and even poke fun at the very platform that they're using. But when you get to their posts, you start to see a little bit of their wit and humor, and you start to see their brand values come through. Let's look at the middle one. It says, this post is for everyone who has ever found themselves stuck with a fancy drink their friend bought them while they were secretly wanting a Newcastle instead. Clever, right? It speaks to their desire and their job of trying to build that one-to-one connection with the customer, finding that insight that people can relate to, finding that unique perspective that really helps build their brand. And in the process, they've done a great job of building their brand and their fan base and building content that people want to be associated with. Next, you want to listen to your customers. Now, all of us being in the marketing field have probably sat in a focus group room at one time or another. They're tiny, they're painful. You watch 10 to 12 people, usually who may or may not be representative of your target audience. They may have just wanted the $100 to go there. And they may or may not choose to pontificate on your product and give you the feedback you want. But now we have the unique ability to listen to our customers every single day. And it can improve our ability to engage with them every single day. We can watch what they like, what they comment on, what they share, and optimize our experience, improve our publishing, improve our marketing overall, because we hear that feedback. On a grander scale, we can also listen to our customers as we build out brand new products. Previously, we had to spend millions of dollars or euros to really get to figure out if we have the right established audience for a new product that we're building. And what's interesting is now we can actually do that all online at a moment's notice. We basically have access to a real-time, always-on, true-to-market size focus group at all times. Look at what Lay's did. Lay's is celebrating their 75th anniversary this year. They ran a worldwide campaign focusing on 14 countries from South Africa to India, with the idea that they would generate new ideas for their next great potato chip flavor. In the US, they partnered with Facebook to do this. They ended up generating 8 million different chip ideas from throughout the entire campaign. 8 million. They will literally never have to do an ideation session again. But the reality is, the concepts that they came up with, some were fun and engaging, right? Some were ridiculous, like chili and chocolate and Cajun squirrel. Some were ridiculously delicious sounding, like mustard and sweet onion or spicy meatball, or this one on the left, which was deli in a bag, pastrami, cheese, and onion. They listened to their customers. And in the end, the customer who actually comes up with the winning chip flavor, not only will that chip get made, but they could win $1 million or 1% of the sales. Pretty good, right? I'm hoping it's not Cajun squirrel. Next, you want to make sure you're creating share-worthy content. We did a study with Nielsen where we found that 47% of people trust what they hear from television, print, and radio. But 92% of people trust what they hear from family and friends. The reality is, we've known this all along inherently, right? And at Facebook, we've known it, and in fact, we've built an environment where you can influence people to become your brand advocates. You can inspire that kind of sharing overall. So when we look at sharing, we have to go back to what I said at the beginning. Why do we share? We have to tap into that fundamental human nature that we have to define ourselves, to validate ourselves, to build connections with others. And the content that we're building needs to be share-worthy. Let's look at Mercedes. Mercedes has obviously built an amazing brand and amazing cars, but they've also built an amazing presence on Facebook. One of the things they know about their fans is that whether they're customers or not, they love the art and craftsmanship of their automobiles. They also love the lifestyle that Mercedes has created. So when Mercedes posts on Facebook, they capitalize on this. They use photos that really romance their cars, that make them look like works of art. They actually also post music, playlists, songs that reflect the lifestyle. They post videos that really demonstrate the beauty of their cars. And what's the result? People want to share that. They want to be a part of that lifestyle. They want to use that as a brand to define themselves. So most of Mercedes posts, or a lot of them, see tens of thousands of shares and likes and comments. It's absolutely staggering. You should always remember, as you're creating content, to ask yourself, would I want to share this with my family and friends, even if I didn't work at this company? Or would I want my friends to share this with me? Should always be your litmus test. Next, you can't think about social in isolation. All too often, we put social over in a separate bucket over here, and we think about it in a silo. Whether that's because of the way our organizations or our agencies are structured, the reality is we need to be thinking about it more cohesively, more comprehensively with all of our other media. So you need to think about, going back to how we gather information, that we often don't just go to one person to gather information. We go to multiple people to inform our opinion and to help us make decisions. And this is no different. I may not just depend on television to make my decision about whether I buy a product. I may go to multiple sources. So you need to build a multifaceted campaign. Nutella did just that. Nutella is a great example. Over the holiday season last year, they wanted to build more awareness and more association of their product with the holiday season. So they had a 6-week television campaign complemented by a 2-week Facebook campaign. In the end, they partnered with GfK and Facebook to better understand the impact this had on brand, ROI, and reach. What they found was that, first of all, 15% of all the sales from the campaign were driven by the ads that were run on Facebook. Second, they found that people who were exposed to both the television campaign and the campaign on Facebook had a higher ROI than people who were exposed to either one in isolation, just reinforcing the synergistic effect that the two channels have with each other. And finally, they saw that the reach was extended pretty significantly by their work on Facebook. The campaign reached 13.2 million people, 30% of the German population overall. But when you dug in deeper, you realized that 3.8 million of those people were reached exclusively through Facebook. They would not have seen the campaign otherwise. So you have to remember that the massive scale and the exposure that this platform can bring is a great complement to any other media. Finally, you have to make sure that your stories are seen. Think about it this way. If you were building a television spot, let's say you found the perfect director, the perfect actress, the perfect location, you had the perfect script. You filmed the perfect 30-second spot. And then you said, I'm not going to buy any media. I'll just leave that right there and hope people find it. You would never do that, right? You would think you were insane if you did that. But the reality is, all too often, that's what people do on Facebook. Remember what I said before about the 2.5 billion stories running through news feeds every day? Your job as marketers is to make sure that your story gets noticed. In fact, we've seen that only about 16% of brand stories are noticed in the feed. So it's important to make sure that not just your fans see them, but their friends see them, and then even beyond in terms of your broader target audiences. KitKat is a great example. KitKat recognized this. They also recognize the power of Facebook as a great platform for sharing video and getting people to engage with video. So they use it as an inherent part of their broader campaign. I'll show you the video now.
Make the most of your break. Have a break, have a KitKat.
So amusing, right? They posted it first to their fans to make sure that they saw that story. But then what they did is they bought video ads to their broader target audience of 25 to 35-year-olds to drive that reach and to make sure their stories were seen. In the end, it drove 11% of their sales overall in the course of the entire campaign. And most importantly, it was proven to be the most efficient way to drive the right brand metrics that they were looking for. You need to make sure your stories are seen by the right audience. So where does that leave us today? Started this out by saying we're here at a unique and amazing point in time. And I truly believe that. For the first time, we as marketers are able to build one-to-one personal connections with customers in a way never before seen and at a scale never before seen. And it is now on us to take into consideration what we know to be fundamental truths about human behavior, how people share, how they gather information, and the fact that everything is suddenly being organized and filtered through people. And we need to make our brands a part of that conversation. Thank you.